The alert came in at 2:47 in the morning. I was half asleep, phone on the nightstand. Motion detected. Guest house. I assumed it was a raccoon. We'd had one get into the trash the week before. I opened the app. It wasn't a raccoon. There were two people on the screen, a man and a woman. The man was my husband, Marcus. The woman was not me. I've thought about what it feels like to become part of a cheating revenge story. I always assumed those were other women's lives. Dramatic women. Women who hadn't been paying attention. I thought I had been paying attention. I sat up and watched the footage for 11 seconds. Then I closed the app. Then I opened it again. Marcus and I had been married for 9 years. We had a house in a good neighborhood, a joint checking account, a shared investment portfolio, and a guest house in the backyard we occasionally rented short-term. I handled the finances. He handled the renovations and the landscaping. It had worked for a long time. The guest house sits behind the main house on our property. 1 bedroom, small kitchen, a narrow patio facing the yard. Marcus had said it would be perfect for family visits. My parents used it once. After that, it stayed empty. At least that's what I believed. The first sign came in late September. A 30-day rental booking appeared on a date I didn't remember entering. The guest's name was listed as Priya. I told myself I'd added it during a busy week at work and forgotten. I didn't look further. That was the first mistake. In October, I started noticing small withdrawals from the joint checking account. $40, $80, restaurant charges at places I hadn't been to. Twice, a charge appeared on a Tuesday afternoon when Marcus had told me he was working from home. I wrote them down in the Notes app on my phone. 6 entries over 3 weeks. I told myself there was another explanation. I didn't say anything. After I closed and reopened the app a second time that night, I watched the full clip. 53 seconds. Marcus let the woman in with a key I had not given out. I didn't sleep after that. By 5 a.m., I had pulled every camera clip from the previous 3 weeks and organized them by date. He had been there 11 times. She had been there 9 of those 11 nights. Twice during hours when I believed he was at his brother's place watching football. I kept scrolling. Her car pulling into the back driveway. Marcus walking out to meet her. Both of them carrying groceries inside. I checked the timestamp. 3 weeks earlier. Then another clip. 2 days after that. Another one. 4 days later. Sometimes during the afternoon. Sometimes late at night. Once while I was out of town. The pattern kept repeating. I screenshotted every clip. I copied the files to a personal cloud account he had no access to. Then I closed the app and went to make coffee. My hands were shaking while I poured the water. I opened the rental platform and pulled the booking history. The 30-day reservation had been extended. Twice. The total now ran through the end of December. She had been living in our guest house for 6 weeks. Marcus had registered her under a second rental account, a new account, created separately, so the booking wouldn't appear in our main dashboard. I checked the account creation date. September 4th. I went back to my notes. The restaurant charges had started September 7th. Then I opened our utility account. The property has 2 electric meters, one for the main house, one for the guest house. The guest house usage had tripled, not a small increase. a permanent one. Someone had been living there. I opened our joint bank account. That's where the second pattern appeared. Small grocery charges. The same store. Every few days. I clicked the transaction details. Marcus's debit card. The purchases stretched back almost 2 months. Groceries, cleaning supplies, a hardware store, then a furniture store. I searched the receipt images connected to the charges. One of them showed a small gray couch. $380. I went back to the cameras. 2 weeks earlier, a delivery van had pulled into the back driveway. Marcus carried a boxed couch through the guest house door. Same day as the purchase. He wasn't visiting her. He was furnishing a second home. On our property. I pulled our investment portfolio statement. One line, a withdrawal request for $22,000. Initiated September 11th. Completed September 18th. I had not submitted that request. I checked the account access log. I had added Marcus 2 years earlier for tax purposes. I hadn't thought about that access in months. The withdrawal had been routed to an account number I didn't recognize. I wrote the routing number down. Then I went back 90 days in our checking account. The small charges were the surface. Beneath them were 3 larger transfers, $1,800, $2,600, and $3,400, each labeled as contractor payments. We had not hired any contractors. 12 weeks, roughly $30,000 moved. I sat with that number. I didn't say anything to Marcus that evening. I went to work. I answered emails. I came home. I made dinner. He talked about a project at his office. I listened. The next morning, while he was at work, I walked down the path to the guest house. The door was locked, but the curtains were different. Through the window, I could see dishes on the counter that didn't belong to us, a coffee machine, 2 mugs in the sink. I stood there long enough to hear the refrigerator running. Then I walked back to the main house. That afternoon, I opened the property documents from when we bought the house. I had purchased the guest house property before Marcus and I married. When we combined finances, I had added him to the checking and investment accounts, but I had never transferred the deed. I hadn't thought about it in years. I reread the ownership section 3 times. The property was titled solely to me. That's when I understood what he had forgotten. He forgot the property was still mine. The guest house, the rental income, the listing, the woman living inside it. All of it was sitting on a property titled solely to me. I contacted a real estate attorney the next morning using a phone Marcus wasn't on the plan for. I brought the camera footage, the account access logs, the transfer records, and the original property deed. I didn't explain the affair. I just asked a few narrow questions. Who controls occupancy decisions on a property in a single name? What rights exist for accessory dwellings? Can unauthorized residents be removed? The attorney looked at the deed and said, "This is straightforward. Authority follows the title holder," which meant the guest house Marcus had turned into a private apartment didn't legally belong to him to assign. By the end of that week, the rental listing had been removed. A formal vacate notice was sent through documented channels within the legally required window. It was delivered to the guest house door, not to Marcus. The cameras recorded the moment she opened the envelope. She read the first page, then the second, Then she took out her phone. Marcus's car pulled into the driveway 20 minutes later. They stood on the patio talking in low voices. He read the notice twice. Then he turned and looked toward the main house. But he didn't walk up the path. That evening, he came inside holding the paper. He asked if I knew anything about it. I told him I did. I explained the notice had been filed through an attorney. He asked how I even knew someone was living in the guest house. I told him the cameras had been recording the entire time. He didn't ask another question after that. I opened a separate bank account the same afternoon. My direct deposit was redirected before the next pay cycle. Then I met with a second attorney about the $22,000 withdrawal. Over the next 2 weeks, the guest house slowly emptied. The gray couch disappeared. The grocery deliveries stopped. The lights stayed off. Her car never returned. Marcus started spending more nights away from the house. When he did come home, he barely spoke. A month later, he moved out completely. 2 days after that, I filed. The settlement closed in the spring. The $22,000 withdrawal was part of the filing. So were the transfer records. So were all 53 seconds of footage from that October night. The documents handled everything. I kept the property. I had the locks changed and the camera system upgraded. The cameras are still up. I used to think this kind of thing required a confrontation. It doesn't. It requires documentation. There are more stories like this one. Most of them turn on the same thing, something small that the other person forgot about. A deed, a clause, a name that was never removed. They always forget something.